Thank you for joining us this evening. Regular scheduled council meeting of the Park City City Council on January 12th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Marlo, would you call the roll?
John Lynn here. George Glover. Here. Ben Salcetta.
Here.
Melvin Kerr.
Here.
Tom Jones.
Here.
George Capps.
Here.
Brandy Bailey.
Here.
Jim Schrader.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Tonight, Pastor Bill Coons is going to lead in the invocation, and Ben is going to lead in the pledge. Everybody, please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you this evening. Father, we lift the mayor and the city. They will do the good work. Father, I ask that you move them towards seeking wisdom on all of their decisions that they make. Father, that they will do the very best. Bless this meeting tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. George? John? Got a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. We have a couple of items underneath awards and presentations, and we're going to start with Park City Pride's Christmas Lighting Contest winners.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, Michael McGonigal with Park City Pride, and I'm here to announce the winners of the Holiday Light Fight. They didn't make it easy on us this year. What we did was we had the previous year's winners come out and be judges. The winners are Crystal Martinez, for Ward 1, it's Crystal Martinez at 6819 Wendell. Second place in Ward 1 was Melissa Allen, 2953 East Fairchild. In Ward 2 was 2618 East Evanston, Terry Ford. Second place was 2557 East Ventnor Court, Tim Horn. Now my phone's not wanting to work right. Let me find it again.
While you're searching for that, we'll just add that in the Park City Post, those pictures came out, so anybody can look at that and appreciate those homeowners and what they did, and as he reads off the remaining addresses there.
And like I said in the Post, in my interview, I wish we could get some more businesses to help with this so we can get better prize money. Ward 3, first place was 1310 East Charleston, Jason Lillibridge. Second place was 6661 North Longmont, Renee Andrews. And Ward 4, actually, we had winners this year. Was 5033 North Primrose, Brad Wood, and 4933 Shadow Lane, Mr. Zapata. And I want to thank all the residents of Park City because this year we had quite a few nominations, and there was, even if they weren't nominated, there was still a lot of houses out decorated.
Awesome.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And next, Dana, would you like to introduce our new Public Works Director?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and as I always say, this is the real pleasure of my job is when I get to brag on our employees. We have a great team. We have a new addition that is going to really just make us blossom even more. I'm excited to introduce to you this evening Simon Wiley. He is our new Director of Public Works. He comes to us with a solid background in public works, including in leadership. He was the Director of Public Works at Great Bend, Kansas. He is a certified public manager. He has Kdot inspections certification, certifications in construction management, and community and economic development. He's a member of a variety of professional organizations and associations that will really enhance this position as well, which include American Water Works Association, the Kansas Rural Water Association, the American Public Works Association, and the American Society of Civil Engineers. So it's my pleasure to introduce Simon Wiley.
Hello, how are you guys doing today? So, as you heard, I'm Simon. That was like the best introduction I've ever had in my life. So, I'm glad to be here, and I look forward to the future here at Park City.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We look forward to what you can do for us.
Thank you.
We've already
Thank you.
heard great things about you.
All right. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
We don't have anybody signed up to speak at public forum this evening, so we'll move on to staff reports and code enforcement. How you doing, Chief?
Mr. Mayor, council members, wanted to give you just a brief report on the activities of our code enforcement officers over the last year for 2020. And I think there's a visual here that goes with this. There we go. We have 3 officers. These are 2 of them here, appropriately dressed for COVID-19, as you can see. The next slide that's up here is a list of their activities for the year. And I'm going to go through this and kind of give a description of what these different categories are to help you understand a little bit better about how to interpret what's on the chart. So if you see on the left side there, the column that says classification, I'll just go down through that and give a brief description of what that would be. So animal cases, and these are just examples, it's not 100% comprehensive, but animal cases would include running at large, no pet license, no vaccination, or having a prohibited animal. Nuisance cases, examples would be grass and weed violations. That's probably the largest category of all. That also includes junk vehicles, trash and debris, parking in the yard, paint cases where residents have problems with paint peeling off the house and that sort of thing. The next one, zoning cases. This includes some issues with RVs, signs in the right-of-way. For instance, the advertising signs that people put out by the side of the road. Improper land usage. Those would be some examples of zoning. And then finally, other cases and incidents. These would include a few cases of assisting outside agencies. There are a few instances where, for instance, another city has not had an animal control officer available, and we have gone and helped them. Occasionally they come and help us as well. Inspecting storm shelters and inspecting firework tents. You can see throughout the year by month there's a breakdown of the different cases. But I want to talk just briefly about what's impacted the number of cases and the activities that they've had throughout the year, because as you know, 2020 was a very unusual year, to say the least. Because of concerns with COVID, code enforcement we had to direct them to limit some of their contact with citizens at various stages. And as you know, that's changed throughout the year at various points in time. I think we all have kind of seen the ebb and flow of the guidance from CDC and from our local health department. So we've followed that guidance as time has gone on. So there were times when we were more restrictive as far as what we would allow them to do, and there are other times when we would ask them to have a little bit more contact with the public. But that absolutely had an impact on the number of cases that we were able to address throughout the year. Initially, when the pandemic hit, we asked them to back off and just basically only handle dangerous animal cases or something where it was an immediate safety concern. That began to ease up a little bit, where we began to address also violations that had gone beyond what was even a reasonable amount of time with consideration for the virus. This was, again, based on the CDC and Health Department guidelines as they change throughout the year. But another thing that's impacted our ability to address cases this year is staffing issues. Some of this is related to COVID. As you know, with the CARES Act, we've had to accommodate some employees as far as people who have children, for instance, that are impacted, where they have to pull them out of school and have to work from home. We've been able to accommodate that with some variations in schedule, and I'll cover that here in just a moment. But all three of the code enforcement officers were gone at different times for COVID-related issues. So we're talking, some of this was exposure, where they had to be quarantined. Some of it was illness, where they may have thought they had the disease, and without getting into too much personal information there. One code enforcement officer was on extended alternate duty, and that was from sometime in September until just recently. So that was 1/3 of our staff right there was down for essentially about 1/3 of the year. On the schedule, if we could back up, well, I'm sorry, this is the correct chart at the bottom of that chart. The current schedule, with consideration for the CARES Act, which would mean employees that we're having to accommodate, we're still having coverage 7 days a week, and it's 10 to 12 hours a day. Now, that doesn't, of course, take into consideration if somebody's gone for illness or vacation, that sort of thing. The regular schedule, if it weren't for COVID-19, we'd have coverage 7 days a week, 10 to 14 hours a day, so we have a little bit more coverage. That varies throughout the year too, though, depending on daylight, because when we get into the winter hours where it's dark sooner, we don't have them out as much because they can't do as much in the evenings when it's dark. We've been able to accommodate these schedules by having them work longer days, and we have an overlap. So I think we have really good coverage when everyone is up and well and is able to work. So I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any questions on code enforcement or the activities.
Does anybody have any questions for the chief? Ben?
I just have one question on the nuisances cases, there we go. Noticed a huge decline October, November, December. Is that a regular pattern that you see year after year, or is something driving it this last time?
The biggest thing that drives it that's grass and weeds. That's our biggest months for that are generally April through August, roughly. Those are the biggest months. That's the growing season, if you will, for grass, and it drops off. This schedule for 2020, the activities for 2020 have been really, that's an unusual year. I don't know what else to say other than it's, with COVID and so forth, it's been very, I wouldn't call it at all typical. But that's the biggest driver of activity in that nuisance category is grass and weeds.
Okay. I just noticed that January was the largest month for the year, and so didn't know if there was maybe just a drop off.
And that's a good question. Without looking, I'm pretty sure this is correct, but we were dealing with some junk, trash, debris cases where we had a large backlog that we were trying to catch up with, some long-term issues that we're trying to deal with. So I think that's probably what you're seeing there in January.
Thank you.
Okay. George?
I was reading the Interwatch today, and I noticed there was a ton of garbage and debris. What are they talking about, the garbage and debris?
It varies, sort of depending on the area of town, of course. If we're talking commercial, then it could be businesses that have prohibited items that they've stored up, if they had trash tires or whatever. If it's in residential area, then we're probably talking folks that have debris that they've allowed to pile up over a period of time and haven't taken care of it. That's kind of a generalization, but that's...
Well, are they talking about leaves or, when I vision garbage and debris, I guess maybe I don't understand what...
I'd say, but I don't know if if the leaves would be included in that particular category. I would guess it would fall under nuisances in general, but without knowing and looking, I'm not sure.
Okay,
Wouldn't be a wrong answer.
I just seen there's a ton of them on there, and I just wondering what it is they're saying. Thank you.
I can give you a more specific answer to that.
Okay, thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Sean?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. First of all, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had a safe and wonderful holiday season. Just updates on various projects around the community. First of all, starting off with 61st Street project. As Council's well aware, we contracted late last year with Land Acquisitions Incorporated to help us secure the necessary right-of-ways and temporary easements for the project. We've come to agreements with all but one of the property owners so far, and that's expected to be resolved later on this week. In regards to the temporary easements, which I think we had a total of 13, the vast majority of the property owners have been very supportive for the project overall, and most have agreed to donate or dedicate their temporary easements to the community. The bids, as far as the utility relocates, which would be the next phase, the bids for the water line and utility relocates, there's one out there on the streets right now that closes this Friday, and that would be presented to council at the next council meeting for those expenses. The next up, water work continues on the Broadway sewer project, as well as the 69th Street water line project. The sewer line is well ahead of schedule. Sometimes the contractor has had 3 separate crews out there working in different directions. It is expected to be ready to serve the industrial use on 69th and Broadway. They should be able to attach to that line later on this month. As far as the 69th Street water line, it's about 2,400 foot worth of length, and so far they've completed about 1,350 linear feet. There have been some conflicts as far as where they thought certain lines were buried and located versus where they actually were located. But that too is on pace to finish up by the middle of February at the latest. Third project would be the 77th Street project. We're under contract and partnered with Valley Center and PEC. They are finalizing up the designs and the plans at this time. As far as the intersection, there is one temporary easement that's required, but the property owner of that has already agreed to dedicate to the city. And there's one right-of-way taking on the northwest corner, but seeing how that is actually located in Valley Center proper, I've asked Brent Clark, and we've discussed this, for him to take the lead on it, because if it ever gets to that point to where it needs to go further, it would actually be their city council that would need to direct that. So he's coordinating a meeting between us and the property owners at this time. So something a little bit further downrange, but some staff or some council members are well aware of. Staff is working with various different property owners along both Hydraulic and 53rd Street to determine the best path forward regarding our sewer collection system. Right now, both property owners that we are dealing with are very supportive of what we're proposing, and it would be working out best for them as well as for potential growth for the city. It would help us establish our sewer system to where if future development happens more to the east, all the way over to Hillside, the city should be able to accommodate that. As far as upcoming events, all of you know, council has been working this last few days on a video presentation for the Downtown Visioning Public Engagement Phase. That phase will kick off on January 27th with the next Chamber of Commerce meeting. This way we are inviting both the seniors from the Senior Center to come over and participate in that lunch, as well as the business members, so that they will have a chance to voice their ideas and opinions. That luncheon will be followed up later on in that evening, somewhere between 4 and 6 or 5 and 7, with an open house here at the City Administration Center. That will be for all residents to come out and voice their ideas and opinions. The City Administration Center is going to be set up so that we'll be able to observe COVID protocols, as well as sequencing throughout the facility. We're going to bring them in through the training classroom, show them a short little video of what we're trying to get accomplished, and then have them cycle through council chambers in order to let their opinions and ideas be known. So that's on January 27th. And finally, as always, the city is looking for good employees. For those interested, the city currently has positions advertised both on Indeed as well as our website and Kansas Jobs. for both police officers, a senior financial accountant, a water tech 1, and then also CCUA is currently advertising for their new facilities manager now that Randall has left. As far as Randall, we wish him and his family the very best. So pending any questions, that's all I have, sir.
Does anybody have any questions? John?
Sure.
I noticed the water tower up at Graham Park. On
Yes.
the bottom side of it is starting to get the black kind of a mildew on the bottom of it.
Yes.
Which I think we've had trouble with that in the past on a different tower that it was based on the circulation inside, there was something wrong with it. I just wondered if
I have a good new public works director that'd be right on top of that. So, sir, I don't have an answer for you, but we will get back with you on that.
Anybody else? Thank you, Sean.
Yes, sir.
That brings us to our consent agenda. Is there a motion? Ben?
Sir, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Jim?
I second it.
We got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Next, I need a motion for a recess for 5 minutes so we can take care of some Kansas Land Bank items. Tom
I'll make a motion for 5-minute or recess.
and Brandy? Okay, we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. We're ready when you are. All right. We're going to reconvene as the Park City Council at 7:24 p.m. where no action was taken for city business at that point with the council. That brings us to item 9 under new business, which is discuss and receive the annual Park City BMX report. Jamie?
Hi. So last year was pretty amazing for us. We really didn't, I mean, we knew it was going to be bigger, but it blew up. And I think COVID helped with that a lot, but we had a huge year. We were able to hold 53 single-point races. We ended up in second place for the state of Kansas as far as tracks go. 18th in the region, which is pretty huge. Some of the bigger tracks were closed down because of COVID, but we still would have been right up there. And we earned the Gold Cup Qualifier for this year, which will be held the weekend of June 18th, 19th, and 20th. So that weekend, we will have people from the whole South Central region coming to Park City to race in that race.
Fantastic.
Yes. We did a lot of improvements. I mean, we rebuilt the track. We had to do some pretty big upgrades in the building out there because we had to get a food license. We acquired our nonprofit status, and then we put that fence up to keep people back away from the track during races. So
The curb appeal from the interstate is fantastic. I mean, you guys have done a fabulous job.
Thank
It's
you.
always been an eyesore, and it is no longer an eyesore anymore.
Thank you.
It's beautiful when you drive by it, and it really represents the city well.
Well, and I mean, the asphalt will be redone this spring whenever the weather, once it's warm enough and it stops raining. And we're going to glue or slurry the track, help prevent some of the ruts from riding on it after it's rained. That'll be a huge help as far as not having to cancel races. And the kids here in town can go ride, and it's gonna be slick, but they're not gonna leave ruts in it.
Did you want to talk about your revenue that you did?
Well, I mean, we did the $50,318. Without that, there's no way we could have done everything out there that we did, because we've put almost all of it back into it. I mean, we paid USA BMX $15,703. That's for holding races and new memberships. We put almost 11,000 of it back into trophies and awards. And then 6,000 of it, roughly, is t-shirts, tubes, things that we resell at the track. And concessions was right around $6,000. And there are some odds and ends that aren't added in there because we paid for our nonprofit and paid for the food license. But everything went back into it.
Yes, it did. And what do you think you'll do for this next year? Do you think you'll continue to?
I mean, we had
Pull
to, when we did the federal, as far as filing that, we had to project for 3 years. And we went above and beyond what we projected for next year as far as that goes. So, I mean, my goal would be to double it again. I mean, that's what I told you guys a year ago, and we more than doubled it, so I hope we can.
I think you will. I think you I mean, you really have done a fantastic job over there. I've seen social media posts from people that I know that are not associated with Park City coming in and using the track. You really have represented the city well. You guys are doing a phenomenal job out there.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Mayor, I think they deserve a big thank you and a big hand.
They do deserve it. And it's always great when you get to come back and talk to the council and just tell us what you do, and we don't have to chase people down to find out how you guys did. It's just fantastic to hear what you had. Ben?
Sure. I want to go ahead and make a motion to receive and file the Park City BMX annual report, but say also in that Jamie, since we met a few years back, I think we met the night that huge rain out right before Halloween, and you and your family's dedication to the track and to making it work is obviously very well seen by the numbers that we're seeing. So thank you to each one of you who've sacrificed, because I know you don't do it for the money.
No,
So
we sure
thank you
don't.
all very much.
All right. Tom?
Excuse me, I'll second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Thank you again. Thanks for coming this evening.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 10, which is discuss and consider a resolution issuing taxable industrial revenue bonds or properties. see Sarah's here this evening. We haven't seen you in a while.
Good evening, it's good to be back.
Yes.
Sarah Steele with Gilmore and Bell. We're bond counsel to the city, and we're here this evening to conduct a public hearing that is required by state law anytime there's a consideration by the city of granting a property tax exemption. And then after the public hearing, you will consider a resolution of intent. This is the first action to be taken on this industrial revenue bond. And we will come back at a later time with a bond ordinance that will actually authorize the issuance of these bonds. I'm sure you're all familiar with this project. Pratt Love Box is constructing a new facility in south of here, and project that a $51 million facility is going to be constructed. Dustin Carver with the company, he's general manager, is here and can answer any questions on the project. But again, this resolution expresses the city's intent to issue the bonds. It is the first step in the project. Industrial revenue bonds are not an obligation of the city in any way. You will not be responsible for any of this $51 million in debt. It's purely an accommodation to provide them a sales tax exemption on the materials going into construction, as well as a property tax exemption on the facility for a period of 10 years. Be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Jim?
I just had one. I kind of wanted it stated just how many jobs this is bringing to the city when this opens.
Dustin.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dustin Carver, the general manager at Pratt Industries. Right now we have roughly 215 to 220 employees. Obviously, all those will come to the new facility, and then over the next 5 to 7 years, we'll add probably 50 employees to that. So be up, 280, something like that.
Yeah, those are very nice numbers, so thank you for bringing all that to Park City. Appreciate that.
We're very excited for it. So, any other
Tom,
questions?
did you have a question?
No, I was going to make a motion, but I don't want to be premature.
Go ahead if you had anything else. And I know Josh had signed up to speak too, so.
Councilmember Jones, we need to open the public hearing and hold that. And then, once that's concluded, we'll be ready for the motion.
Okay. Josh, did you have anything you want to add?
I did not. We signed up and Dave and I are here. Oh, okay.
Just introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Josh Erie with Miller Valentine Construction. We'll be working for Pratt in constructing their new facility. Dave and I are here really just representing them, along with Pat Bear from Boffman, our civil engineer. Really just wanted to come tonight if you guys had any questions for us, specific questions that we could answer for you. That's why we're here.
Okay. I'll go ahead and open this public hearing at 7:33. And I'll ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak on this item. Josh, you want to just give us a little history on kind of how you guys kind of worked your way here to Park City, and just your thought process and
Sure.
what your partnership you hope to have here?
Yeah, kind of the history, we've done a number of projects with Pratt Industries in multiple states. Is that all right if I pull this
Yes,
down?
absolutely.
Okay. So, we looked at a couple of other sites, honestly, closer to their existing facility, and there were some issues, some complications with those other sites, and then, we happened upon your Park City property, which nice big open field and didn't have a lot of those same complications. So That's kind of how we gravitated towards Park City. Sean's been great to work with. You guys have been very accommodating, very pro-development, and I think it's a good partnership. So we're excited. Construction duration will be about a year, and I don't know how much tilled up construction you guys see in this part of the country, but that's what it'll be. So we'll do a lot of the dirt work. We'll actually pour the floor slab, and we'll cast the wall panels on the floor slab and then erect them in place, brace them off, lots of structural steel and roof deck, and then the fun starts inside. So there's a lot that will happen. Pratt will move in some equipment along the way, and we'll work together and be a nice, large facility for Park City as well as Pratt.
Awesome. I'll ask one more time if anybody from the public wishes to speak on this item.
Just a question for you while we're still doing that.
Go ahead.
Square footage wise, just while we're talking about it again.
924,000 square feet. And then there's actually the northeast corner of the building expandable. I would say another 150,000 potential.
And these IRBs are also for equipping equipment within inside the facility, is that correct?
Sarah?
I believe, Deanna, I believe that much of this is building cost. There may be some equipment in there as well. Equipment, of course, is exempt from property taxes forever, so that may be adjusted.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, that's all right. It's the 51 million is mainly just the building. The equipment will be additional to that. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll go ahead and close this public hearing at 7:37 p.m. Tom?
Sorry about jumping the gun. There was no note on here about a public hearing, so I skipped it on mine. I'd like to make a motion or move that we approve Resolution 1060-2021 determining the feasibility of issuing taxable industrial revenue bonds for the purpose of financing and acquisition, construction, and equipment or equipping the commercial facility to be located in said city, and authorizing execution and related documents.
Ben?
Second for just discussion, just real quick, I had a question as far as when approximately thought construction might begin. I might have missed that part.
Once we get the approval, we'll close on the land very shortly. And, I think we'll definitely be moving dirt before any of the crops are in this spring. So it's going to be, we're all very anxious to get it going. So
Awesome. Welcome to Park City.
it'll be quick. Yep.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Did you have a comment?
Well, I would just say, I think everybody knows that these are going to be good quality jobs. Pratt Industry pays well, has good benefits, and I believe it'll be a great addition to our city.
Yep. I agree with that.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. Marla, would you call the roll?
John Lanier. George Glover. Ben Salcetta.
Aye.
Melvin Kerr.
Aye.
Tom Jones.
Aye.
George Capps.
Aye.
Brandy Bailey.
Aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye.
And that resolution passes 8-0. I want to thank you both for coming. Sometimes people ask for revenue bonds and never even bother to show up. So it says a lot that you showed up this evening just to go through the process, and we appreciate that.
Yep. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That brings us to item 11, which is discuss and consider approval of the FTA program application with anticipated local math of $9,974.70. Madison?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think that was supposed to say local match, not math. I'm not good at math anyway, so. The senior center is in need of a new van, and upon approval, I will be submitting an application for the FTA 5310 program. And if it's okay, I will just go ahead and read from my staff memo. That way I give you all the information that's pertinent. The Federal Transportation Administration 5310 program provides funding in the WAMPO urbanized area to assist with meeting the transportation needs to older adults and people with disabilities when the transportation service provided is unavailable, insufficient, or inappropriate in meeting these needs. Funds are apportioned based on population to two groups, either the State Department of Transportation for rural and small urban areas or a designated recipient for large urban areas. WAMPO is in charge of the competitive selection process for these funds. The program aims to improve mobility for seniors and individuals with disabilities by removing barriers to transportation service and expanding transportation mobility options. This program supports transportation services planned, designed, and carried out to meet the special transportation needs of seniors and individuals with disabilities in all areas. Local match requirements for this program is 15% of net project cost when funds are used to purchase a vehicle. Our proposed project consists of the purchase of a new paratransit van with upgrades totaling $66,498. Federal funding of this project would total $56,523.30, with our local match responsibility being $9,974.70. The senior center van will be used for members of the senior center on scheduled outings and trips, including planned necessity shopping and day trips. Attached is hopefully you have in your packet that you have the completed 5310 application, project proposal cost sheet, and worksheet on the paratransit van and the available options and associated costs. If accepted, funds should be awarded July of this year. Purchase of a new senior center van is a part of Park City's 2021 vehicle replacement plan and has been budgeted for this year. So staff recommends approval and authorizing the mayor to finalize and execute consent of the 5310 application and verification of the local match amount of $9,974.70. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yes, Brandy?
So if the grant application isn't awarded to us, do we have enough money in the budget to cover the entire cost of the van, or will we just not purchase it?
It is my understanding that the senior center van is a part of the vehicle replacement plan, and for this year, there was enough to cover the cost.
In the vehicle, the only difference though is in the vehicle replacement plan, we did not plan on a $66,000 vehicle. I think if anything at the time, we planned on somewhere in the neighborhood of about $48,000 for a replacement van, thinking that for the use that it was going to get, more than likely we would look at some step towards getting to that point to where we could ultimately replace it with a brand new one. The 5310 program with the FTA is a phenomenal program because again, you're paying basically 10-15% of the price to get a brand new vehicle, so definitely well worth it.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that we kind of we had the contingency or the money set back up in case we didn't get approved. So, okay, thank you.
Second. I'll second that.
Did you want to make a motion?
Oh, okay, I'll make a motion, yeah. I thought I thought she did, okay. Approve the authority, let's see, where are we at here?
Here, I'll let Tom read it.
Yeah, read it, Tom, and I'll second it, yeah. Oh, here we go.
Go ahead, Melon.
Move to approve the authority, the mayor to finalize the execution, the consent of the 5310 application and verification of the local match amount of $9,974.70.
And Tom, you want to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Did you have a comment, George?
Well, yeah, I'm going to support this, but when we do, after we're through here, while we got Madison captured, I'd like to ask her a question.
All right.
After we do this.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Go ahead, George.
Madison, due to this COVID and stuff, are they still going to do taxes there this year?
That is a fabulous question because I have been having a lot of people calling about that. And yes, we are still planning on providing the AARP tax aid service. It's a free tax filing service for anyone, really. They have obviously been rearranging the process of doing this. But we are going to be providing that service, and we are starting to take appointments the end of this month. So at the end of January, if people would like to call, email, stop by the senior center, and I could schedule them an appointment.
Thank you, Madison. That's a great service, and those people do a good job.
They do. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 12, which is discuss and receive the Land Bank Treasurer's Annual Report to the governing body as required by KSA 12-5903. Marlo?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. KSA 12-5903 requires the Land Bank to make an annual report to the governing body by January 31st of each year, including a report of the audit, receipts, and disbursements from all funds under its control, reflecting all property transactions that occurred during the year, and an inventory of all property held by the Land Bank. It also requires the inventory to be published in the official city newspaper on or before January 31st. Included in your packet were the reports, the audit. As you can see, the only activity was the purchase of the Schellenberger property right behind City Hall.
Okay. Ben?
So I'd go make a motion that we receive the Land Bank Treasurer's Annual Report.
Brandy?
Second the motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 13, which is consider subscription renewal agreement with Tyler Technologies. Dee?
Good evening. The city initially entered into a 5-year agreement with Tyler Technologies for the Encode software in March of 2011. The annual subscription fees at that time were $19,080. In 2016, an amendment to the subscription agreement was approved by council at an annual cost of $21,072. That amendment renewed their original agreement for an additional 5 years that will be expiring at the end of next month. Tyler Technologies has now changed their process, and they're no longer renewing contracts for the 5-year terms. They're now providing amendments for a 1-year term that will auto-renew at their then current rate unless they hear otherwise from their client. They're also now providing an unlimited number of users, which is good for us. Park City's renewal fee for the year beginning March 1st, 2021 is $21,370.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Brandy?
Do you feel like this software does what you would like for it to do? I mean, should we go out for bid or something and see what else is out there? See if something's better for us? I'm just asking the question to make sure that we're...
I would like to say we should. I struggle with the software. I think it is not user-friendly at all. It's very labor-intensive, hard to understand. Probably in my world of having used financial software, I would rate it the worst. My concern with your question is the ability to afford it. New software is expensive, and all of the training costs that go with it, and most importantly, the cost of all the staff time for the conversion and the extra training on top of very full days that we have already. I am not currently at a place in my position where I feel like I have the time to sufficiently understand every piece of the software to lead my staff appropriately through a conversion or to develop a good RFP either. So unfortunately now isn't the time, but I do think at some point in the future that needs to be considered.
Well, I feel like if that's the the feeling you're having. I mean, we're in a year-to-year contract, so I would like to see us to either go out for request for information or at least a request for a proposal. I mean, even if it's just the information, just to see what's out there and see if anything else is, what other communities are using, to see if there is something better that could do a better job for us.
Yeah, I've been told, we were on Encode 9, I've been told Encode 10 is much better. Haven't really gotten anybody to tell me it's good. It's just much better. So, yeah, it would take some research. And
so you say you feel like you're not in a position where you could go out for that. Do you think maybe it's something you could do mid-year, or I mean, what do you feel like you would need to be in a good position to do that?
Well, my life is pretty consumed up until from about this time of year until we adopt a budget. It's just, one huge thing followed by another. For me to have the time to, investigate with some other cities what they like, send out, feelers of things and develop an RFP is going to take quite a bit of time. I would really also like to thoroughly understand. I have generally been the person that knew all the procedures that every financial person was doing. I understood them. I wrote the processes so that a new person could sit down and be able to pick up the notes and just do the job. I have not been able to get loose of my own duties enough to be able to sit down and do that. So I feel pretty inadequate at this point to appropriately lead them because they haven't seen other software. They really don't know what's out there, and I'm not fully familiar with all the ins and outs of what they have to do.
I appreciate your honesty there, but I feel like if we're using a software that's really not user-friendly and it's not, great for us to use, I would really like to see us go out to see if there's something better. Because it's just going to make your life easier.
I agree. In the end, yes, it would.
All right, Ben?
Sure, I think just to follow up there is sometimes the process is laborious in moving forward in something like an RFI or whatever, but the end result pays its dividends just in freeing of time and such like that. And definitely don't want to do it. Obviously 21 is probably too late to do anything since that's coming up in just a few weeks here, but maybe that's our goal for 2022 is to put an RFI together, an RFP together, looking at options available out there. I've heard good things about Tyler, but I think they're in a larger scale for the larger settings. I have not heard great things about their smaller programs as well, so I could understand where you're coming from in that regard, but maybe this is something that we move forward with, not pressing right now, but let's let this play out so that, as we move through the budget process and through that, because it sounds like there's some of this might alleviate some of your workload too if you're not having to struggle with
And I think possibly it could for all of us, but it's going to be a big hill to get over that hump, but yes.
Sure. So I would agree with Councilman Bailey that maybe, Councilmember Bailey, that maybe we should set a goal forward to look for an RFI or RFP in the near future.
Okay, George?
Dee, I want to make sure my mind's clear on this. Are you recommending that we renew this for a year?
Yes, I am, because we don't have a lot of choice.
Okay, thank you.
We're on the phone with them all the time for support, so we don't really have any choice.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think Brandon has some good points, Ben as well. I think our time frame is going to make us rush, and a lot of times when we rush, we make mistakes. So I think we're best, just because this is a short term, that we're better just give us another year, and then during that time period, after the budget's done, we can start fishing. So I say we stick with this and move forward. I will make a motion to approve the one-year amendment to the March 2nd, 2011 contract with Tyler Technologies, which governs the city's access to the software and services in the amount of $21,370 for a term commencing on March 1st, 2021 and expiring on February 28th of 2022, with subsequent annual automatic renewals at the then current rates.
Brandy?
Second for discussion. I'm okay with renewing for the 1 year. I was totally fine with that. I just want to make sure that what I was meaning was that maybe we can look and have something before it's time to renew again in the 1 year time frame. So yes, I mean, we have the time to do it, but, so I just want to make sure that was clear, that I wasn't trying to say, let's renew, or let's look for something right now at this very moment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Thank you, Dee. That brings us to item 14, which is discuss and consider an agreement with Kdot for 61st Street project. Sean?
Yes, sir. Attached is a proposed project agreement between Kansas Department of Transportation and Park City, project number 87-November-0691-01. It's the improvements for the 61st Street from the Broadway intersection west to the West Wichita Valley Center floodway. As you all know, the reconstruction of 61st Street consists of a 3-lane curb and gutter section and an underground stormwater sewer system, as well as a bike path and a sidewalk from the Broadway westward to the west city limits. The agreement outlines general provisions, responsibilities, and funding obligations between the two organizations. Currently, the agreement outlines KDOT's construction costs of just over $2.7 million. On December 8th, the WAMPO Project Selection Committee, at the direction of the TPB, discussed transportation programs for the TIP in years 2021 through 2024 for possible year-end plus-ups. An additional $597,418 was recommended to the TPB for their January 12th meeting, which was today at 3 o'clock. The TPB met, and they did approve the additional amount for both our project as well as a project down in Derby. So there's an additional nearly $600 that they approved for this project. So that will ultimately end up an amendment to the contract, but right now this is what we need to go with. It's the most current up to date. The total estimated project cost is $4.7 million. The city is currently responsible for 20% of the construction cost up to KDOT's funding limit, and then anything above that time or above that amount. Additionally, the city is also responsible for the design, engineering, utility relocations, as well as right-of-way acquisition that we talked about earlier. Staff recommends approval and authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement between the Secretary of Transportation for KDOT and the city.
Does anybody have any questions for Sean? Brandy?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have any questions. I just make a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement between the Secretary of Transportation, Kansas Department of Transportation, and the city.
John? Okay, we got a motion and a second. Do you have any comments, man?
Nope.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Brings us to item 15, which is discuss and consider election of a council president. As everybody knows, with election dates changed, we've moved the council president into the January timeframe to elect a new one. Tom has been serving, and he keeps me on my toes. So now it's time to get going and see what we want to do for this year. Melvin?
Well, I nominate Ben as council president for this year.
Okay. George?
I'll second that.
Anybody else? Brandy?
I would nominate John as council president.
Is there a second for that one?
I'd second that.
Jim? Any other nominations?
I'll nominate George. He hasn't been it for a while.
No, I've already served 2 terms. I decline. Thanks for the thought.
All right, I'm not seeing any other nominations. All those in favor of Ben signify by raising your hand. Okay, all those in favor of John? All right. John, looks like you're there. It says 3-4. 3 for Ben. Was it 4? I only saw these. Who was the other?
George.
George, who did you vote for?
I voted for Ben.
Okay, that was the one I didn't see. What are we doing a 4-4 tie on the
We had
council?
this last year,
Yeah, I had to ask the same question.
and so it goes to the oldest serving member.
Is that the way you remember it, Doug?
That sounds reasonable, yes.
Okay.
I switched my vote last year.
Okay.
All of a sudden, I feel old.
We're old. All right, so we got a 4-4 tie. And based off of seniority, then John becomes the new council president. So, congratulations. All right. That brings us to item 16, which is an executive session. Doug, do you want to lay this out?
The motion lays it out exactly except for the minutes, Mayor, so that would be the appropriate motion.
How much time do you think we need?
10 minutes.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Oh, and I'm sorry, I do need to add, it would be the governing body, the city administrator, the assistant city administrator, and the city attorney.
Okay. Jim?
I would move that we recess into executive session for consultation with the city attorney, assistant, or who all did you label?
No, you don't need to say
Okay.
that, just
All right.
related to pending litigation.
Okay, related to pending litigation for 10 minutes.
John? Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes 8-0. So what we're going to do this evening All right, we're back from executive session at 8:17 where no binding action was taken. That was the last item on the agenda, and we'll move on to governing body reports, and we'll start with George.
Well, the only thing I have to say is stay healthy and, what did Mr. Spock say? Live long and prosper. That's all I have.
Jim?
I don't have anything to add tonight.
Tom?
I don't have anything.
Randy?
I don't have anything.
George?
Yeah, I'd like to say that I'm excited about 2021. I think it's evident by the BMX track and where they're headed that we're poised for great things. So I'm encouraged by this year. And I just hope that I'd like to see more resident participation and moving on with the things that we do in Park City. Thank you.
Melvin?
I'm good. I don't have anything.
Ben?
Yeah, couple things here. One, if you saw the Park City Post, if you didn't follow Ark Valley News over the Christmas holiday recently, if you live in the Valley Center School District, there was a 2 mil levy increase that was passed by the school district in their December meeting for a rec center in 262. I will say, as a resident of 262, as a constituent of 262, as a taxpayer in 262, I was never notified or anything was ever brought to my attention concerning the idea of a proposed mill levy increase for this rec center after they passed their sales tax increase back in November. And a comment made in the paper from one of their rec board members was concerning the fact that they had reached out to their constituents and that people were aware that this could be a possibility. As a resident of USD 262, I was never reached out to, consulted, or even knew that this was an option on the table there. Before that, I think it's important that whether you're a school board member, a council member, a commission member, a state rep, U.S. rep, you make contact with your constituents and you let them know. And you make concerted efforts to be a part. I'll leave it at that because I have more to say, but I don't want to say necessarily everything that I'm thinking on that issue. But I think it's good for our citizens to be aware. There is a protest petition time frame that I believe ends on the 22nd or 23rd of January. I can't remember right offhand. But it would require over 500 signatures in order for it to be put to the vote of citizens. So that is a pretty high bar when you look at it. So I did just want to throw that out there, though, because most people might not have been aware of it as it was passed at their meeting right before Christmas break and New Year's break when people probably weren't paying as much attention. The other thing I wanted to say is as we get into the next 8 days, no doubt we're going to be in a very tumultuous time. We've already seen that in the last week. I would encourage people to do due diligence. There's so much in the realm of, to borrow the phrase, fake news going on in our society. I can't tell you how many messages I've received from people in the last 3 or 4 days on Facebook, just claiming the most absurd things, conspiracies and everything out there. And whether you like the results of the election or you do not like the election results, we have had a peaceful transition of power for over 230 years. And hopefully next Wednesday we will see that continue on there. That's what makes America great. One of the things that make America great is the fact that we've also always had a peaceful transition of power. And what we've seen is continued divisiveness on both sides. And hopefully we can learn just to sit, talk, cool our heads down a little bit. And lastly, I want to say happy 41st anniversary to my parents today.
John?
No, I don't have anything. Motion to adjourn.
I don't know. I just want to say something, and I'll try to keep it brief too, but I'm frustrated with what's going on in the world as well as a lot of other people. You know, it's been a rough year overall. the things that are going on, and I think really here, when we look at city government, there's not a left or a right. We're more of a, there's been no need for that to be in here. We're more like an elevated HOA that has a territory that we need to take care of, that does more with economic growth and development, and infrastructure and what we can do to provide for our citizens. It's more of a service industry, I think, than what we see at a federal level. But people need to be aware of what's going on, and you do need to make sure you're doing research and looking on both sides and being well educated about what's happening. To just sit back and hear one thing and be good with it, you really need to dive in and make decisions for yourself on what's happening. So that's all I'm going to say. John?
I guess I do want to voice something. I guess we're going to get a little political. I'm just very disappointed in the flow of the COVID vaccine in Kansas. I just got to say, our government, so to speak, has, shut businesses down, restricted the hours of businesses. They've kept citizens in nursing homes. I mean, we've done so much, and we've had 9 months for the government to plan on this vaccine coming out. I mean, and I know it's not the end-all be-all, but we had 9 months to plan on this, and we're now, the first phase is still sitting. People are getting their second vaccine, and we haven't even started making plans for the next phase of people. And I'm just disgusted with that. I'm so disappointed that we've decided to give inmates in prisons a priority of the vaccine over ordinary citizens. And I understand they're in a prison system and the state's in charge of their care. I get that. But we've also seen that the prison is not just high-risk people. If they're going to give it to people in their prison, give it to high-risk people in their 70s and their 80s, or whatever that may be. And I also agree we give it to every prison guard. And really, you think about it, people in prison, they're already in quarantine. So why are we giving those people a vaccine before we're giving it to the ordinary public? The people that are going to be driving snowplows that get sick, the people that are taking care of water, the police. I'm flabbergasted. I just cannot understand how we arrived at a decision to give this vaccine to people in a prison system with a controlled environment. I could go on for a long time.
I can tell you how we got here. George and I talked about this. George brought it up earlier. The problem is the intelligent, highly educated people are smart enough to be in the private sector that know how to get stuff done and build things and do things in a timely fashion and save money. Yet the people that we have in federal and upper levels can't do it. And so we end up with a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. And that's where I'm saying we need to start standing up and look at who we're putting in offices and somehow try to attract more intelligent people that know what they're doing. George?
Well, like Ben was talking about, and I've told a couple of people this that's called me, as they talk about Valley Center in the 262, a whole bunch of our citizens live in that Valley Center School District. Why aren't they running for school board over there? The last person I knew in Park City that was on the Valley School Board was Darrell Schooler, and that was years ago. But people that live in Saddlebrook, Bear Hill, anything north of Gary?
Ventnor.
You can vote. You can run for the Valley Center School Board, and people should do it because they got hit pretty good with taxes.
On that note, I want to circle back too, but on that note, a new employer that is going in on Broadway right now is going to make a significant contribution to the Valley Center school tax base.
Yes.
So I really think we need to start working to get a school in Park City. I think it is well due. What they're getting out of that building that didn't get IRBs or anything is significant. do want to circle back to what I was saying. I forgot this part of it. But when I talk about people in prison getting vaccines, I'm not saying, oh, they're in prison, they're not worth their life. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is a 25-year-old in prison is most likely going to recover from the disease and doesn't have to go to work. And there's people that have their own business or even work somewhere and supporting a family that are get ill or whatever it is, or their business has been shut down on Main Street that can't get the vaccine, but a person that's in a cell is going to get it for them.
Yeah, and George makes another valid point. People got to get involved. People got to be knowledgeable and know what's going on. I know for me, I enlisted in the military in '92, and I took an oath to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I don't know where that line is, but I'll tell you what, it's closer now than what it was 15 years ago. It's closer today than what it was 5 years ago, and it's closer today than what it was a week ago. Ben?
I do want to say, when it comes to people being involved, I think one of the hindrances, and this is sometimes not always a popular opinion, especially among conservatives, is that we don't pay our elected officials on state level and such enough. And I say that because unless you can afford to make $10,000 plus per diem for 4 months out of the year and live off of that, and then try to find another job for the remaining 8 months, unless you're independently wealthy or something like that, you can't afford to run for those positions. And sometimes we end up with just a lack of quality candidates running from school board all the way on up because of things like that. And I'm not saying that we don't pay certain ones well. We do pay certain levels well. But a school board race, those people aren't paid anything. Wichita School Board, they serve at the out of their own pocket. And so to find quality candidates that can afford that much time to take that much heat is hard. And I think that's something that we really ought to consider. And I'm not saying us as this, we can't do much about that other than the salaries are here, but I think that's a consideration when we look at the type of quality candidates. It has to be someone that, we have to eliminate this ability for only the wealthy or those who fall in good to be able to afford such things like that.
And there's truth to that, and now I can sit here and feel pretty confident about our budget and our spending and how we do things, and we've done things to elevate things to attract more quality people, and we're trying to do things to keep taxes low. But people get complacent too. Look at your federal income tax that comes out of your paychecks. Nobody talks about that because it just automatically comes out of your check and you don't think about it. If everybody had to start writing a check every 2 weeks and mailing it in, I bet you some people would start getting upset and start paying attention to it. And at the end of the year when you do your taxes and you look and, oh crap, that's how much I paid all year, and then you find out we're buying $4,000 toilet seats and stupid wasteful spending that's going around, that's where we need to get people engaged and involved. And here in the Midwest, we've been comfortable. We usually don't see too much crazy that you see in the rest of the world. But this is coming to your front porch. So you need to start learning, figuring out what's going on, and we need to start making better decisions about the people we put in elected positions.
Well, it's obvious where our city is really growing in leaps and bounds. And John's right, we need our own school. I don't know if we can do it, but we certainly ought to look at it. As I go back to my youth, our life centered around our school. So does Valley Center and these other towns, and Park City needs their own.
Yeah, we need to figure out how we can get our own zip code, and I think home rule is going to become way more important over the next few years, to where we need to take care of ourselves.
I was going to make a comment. We had a council member several years ago look at a school district. We can't afford it. We gave up the best thing we ever had when we gave up Heights and stuff in this area. And I think it was 192 or something was the school district then. Most of it went to Valley Center, or all of it went to Valley Center in Wichita at the time. And taxation at the time was why they didn't keep that school district, or that school and that district together. Because Chisholm Trail was in it, and I think that the little grade school that used to be over at Keachai was in it, and the one in Bel Air was in it, and so, but it was all given up. And we had somebody look at a fire department, we had somebody look at a school district, and we couldn't even afford the fire department 15, 20 years ago. So.
Oh, well, some of that's true. We need to start thinking outside the box, because we've been doing a good job of growing the community and what's going on. And if we can't afford it now, let's figure out how we can afford it. Let's figure out what businesses we got to bring in here, what we got to do, so that we can get some of those things and put them in here for our residents. And start taking care of our boundaries.
To do it, so.
Because we're a lot more responsible, and we're going to do a way better job. Randy.
I just want to say, I guess, and I'm not trying to start a fight with anyone, but we're moving forward, and I get really frustrated, and I get tired of hearing, well, 15, 20 years ago, we couldn't do this, and so we're still set in that mindset that we can't do that, and I mean, like what Ray just said, I mean, let's move forward, and let's look outside the box and find options, because the world's changed from 15 and 20 years ago. There's so much more out there, and there's so much more opportunity. And I mean, what's it going to hurt to look at it again and see what it's going to take now?
Well, I can tell you that probably no one has been more of a critic than I have, but I can tell you our administration has done a great job over the past 5 or 6 years. You look where we were 5 or 6 years ago and look where we're at now. We are truly growing. We're going to become a very, very powerful city in the future. I probably won't live to see it, but you guys will. And it's obvious, you know, our administration is doing a good job. We need to stand in there and support it.
And we need all the voices that teach the history of where we've come from and those that have a vision for where we're wanting to go. Because all of those sides make up the spectrum that make up the council that's moved forward a lot in the last 4 years. I think that those things are continually needed to help move us forward. That said, I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Ken? Second that. Okay, we got a motion and a second. I'm going to need a blood pressure pill in a second. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes 8-0. Thank you.